Whether you're working or not, everyone's got to eat. When you're in business for yourself, you'll incur expenses for meals, whether you're eating your daily lunch on the job, feeding your employees, buying a potential client dinner, or eating while traveling away from home. Are the cost of these meals deductible as a business expense? And if so, how much of these expenses can actually be deducted? I'm the Tax Geek, and here is Deducting the Cost of Business Meals, oversimplified. Before we start, deducting the cost of meals from taxable income is currently only available to those taxpayers who are in business for themselves. This can also include independent contractors who report their incomes on Schedules C or F, as well as property owners who file Schedule E. If you receive compensation as an employee and your wages are reported on Form W-2, any meal expenses, whether consumed locally or away from home, are not deductible, regardless of the business purpose. Deductions of this sort were suspended by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which took effect in 2018. However, this provision in the law is set to expire at the end of 2025. In general, the cost of personal meals eaten at or near your tax home, which I'll define in a moment, are not deductible, just as the cost of ordinary personal meals eaten when not in a business setting. In the case of personal meals, only the cost of meals eaten away from home are deductible as a business expense, and even then, only to a certain extent. According to the IRS, you're considered to be traveling away from home if your work duties require you to be away from the general area of your tax home, there's that term again, substantially longer than a day's work, and you need to sleep or rest to meet the demands of your work while away. Just about everyone has a tax home in the eyes of the IRS, which may or may not be where your physical home is located. Your tax home is defined as the primary location where you conduct your income-producing activities. Sometimes your tax home can be away from your personal residence. In this example, Laurence is a semi-retired self-employed tax preparer. His primary residence is his lake house in Alabama, but January through April of every year he opens up his tax office near Atlanta. While there, he stays in temporary lodgings. Thus, Laurence's tax home is where his office is. But what if you don't really have a primary place of business? For example, if you're a long-distance independent truck driver. For most people in this situation, the places where they and their families live when they are not traveling is their tax home for business travel purposes. The rules regarding tax home are a little more complicated than that, but what I've said should be sufficient for the purposes of this video. When you're not away from home, certain meal expenses can be a deductible expense if there is a clear business component to the meal. These are meals that usually involve coworkers and employees, current or potential customers, clients, or other business contacts, and there must be a significant business purpose to the meal. For example, there's no business purpose in having lunch with a coworker and simply gossiping about work, but there might be if a discussion at the lunch is used in lieu of an actual in-office business meeting. A deductible business meal may not be lavish or extravagant, something which is open to interpretation depending on the circumstances. Lavish or extravagant in one context might not be in another. For most of these meal expenses, whether away from home or not, you may only deduct from your taxable income 50% of the expenses. There are, however, some exceptions to this rule. 100% of the cost of business-related meals is a deductible business expense if you are providing meals to your employees at your place of business, subsidizing the cost of those meals, reimbursing the cost of the meals, or providing meals as part of their compensation. This also applies to meals provided to employees outside of the place of business, such as a company picnic or team building exercise. 100% of the cost of business-related meals is also deductible if you are providing meals to the general public as a form of advertising or promotion. 80, rather than 50% of the cost of meals eaten away from home, may be deducted by workers subject to the Department of Transportation's hours of service limitations. For all intents and purposes, this means interstate truck operators who are in business for themselves. Most other workers who fall into this category, such as certain workers under FAA regulations, railroad employees, or merchant mariners, are usually wage employees and not eligible to deduct meal costs. Entertainment expenses for potential customers, clients, or other business contacts, such as providing event tickets, taking them to sporting events, including them in sporting activities, or entertaining them at nightclubs, are not deductible. This is regardless of any business purpose. This is another provision of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and this prohibition is again due to expire at the end of 2025. For business-related meals that are not consumed while traveling, only the actual cost of the meals may be deductible, subject, of course, to any limitations. For meals consumed while on business-related travel, however, you have two choices for determining meal and other incidental costs. Just as before, you may use the actual cost of the meals. This also includes taxes, service charges, and tips, or you may use a predetermined per diem amount multiplied by the number of days traveled. This amount is designed to cover all meal expenses incurred during the day, plus any incidental expenses you might incur while traveling, such as laundry, dry cleaning, showers, or tips to service personnel. As of October 1st, 2023, the current meals and incidental expense, M&IE allowance, is $59 per day for travel in the continental United States. This adjusts every year with inflation when the federal government's new fiscal year starts on October 1st. Effective October 1st, 2024, the rate rises to $68 per day. Several high-cost areas in the United States, usually large metropolitan areas or areas with large concentrations of tourists, may be subject to a higher per diem rate, which for meal and incidental expenses can be as high as $92 per day effective October 1st, 2024. A link to charts containing all the different per diem rates will be provided in the video description. Since the per diem rate changes for the last 3 months of the year, the higher per diem rate can be claimed for meals consumed while traveling during those months, or the January through October rate may be used for the entire year. Records must be kept of the dates of all business-related travel, including the days you depart and return. For the days of departure and return, 3/4 of the per diem allowance may be taken for those days. Example, you depart for a business trip on Sunday, return the following Friday, and use the standard per diem rate of $59. For both Sunday and Friday, you would be allowed 3/4 of $59, or $44.25, and from Monday through Thursday, the $59 rate. Your allowable meal and incidental expenses for the trip would be $324.50. But as a reminder, whether you use actual expenses or a per diem allowance, the deductible expense is a portion of the total amount. For the previous example, the actual amount that could be deducted would be $162.50 for ordinary business travel and $259.60 if covered under the Department of Transportation's Hours of Service rules. And that's a brief rundown of what goes into deducting business meal expenses. As always, additional resources and information are linked in the video description. Please like the video if you found it informative, and share it with anyone else who could find it useful. Subscribe to the channel to see more oversimplifications of our overcomplicated tax system. And your questions, comments, and suggestions are always welcome in the comment space below. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with more of your taxes oversimplified.